Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest. So what I want to talk about today is the difference between taking responsibility for creating aspects of your reality versus simply acknowledging that there is a power outside of you that can coordinate people, places, circumstances, and events without your influence in it. And when you look at different events, right? So if you create something that is not favorable, say you create like a big bill or something that is, like a fight at Thanksgiving or something like that. If you create that, think about how much coordination the universe or environment had to do to create that malaligned situation. So if you created a fight at Thanksgiving in your reality, right, because you were thinking and feeling it and you had this vibrational expectation that you were going to run into something like that, a fear around it, and then, oh no, it's a big day and the thing happens and it's way worse than you could have ever expected. If you created that, right, so you can view that from the standpoint of like, oh, it's always like this, it's never going to change, whatever, I'm just a victim, etc., right? Or if you have the optics of, holy shit, I was thinking and feeling in alignment with that, and then that physicalized and turned into a real world 3D experience for me to see, smell, taste, and touch. Oh my God. If you look at it from the second perspective, think about how much ridiculousness had to go into creating that event. There had to be people moved, ideas had to flow, energy had to move in a certain way. It all came to this huge climactic crash of intention and wills and all of these different components to create like this theater of experience, right? So if you created that thing that wasn't what you wanted, still looking at the impressiveness of the coordination that you manifested to create that experience will give you the insight that, holy shit, like, I'm pretty fucking powerful. And the good thing about taking responsibility for creating those unwanted things is that if you created those unwanted things, that means you're powerful enough to create things in general. And if you can nail that through your head, you're like, oh my God, I can create things in general with the way that I'm thinking and feeling. Holy shit, I can create the exact opposite. That's what I think is the most important aspects of metaphysics, because when you think like that, now every single thing that's wrong with your life that you take responsibility for as the creator of it, you can appreciate the fact that it was a complex as fuck creation that you created, and you did it unconscious. Meaning that if you can create at that level unconscious, what is the level you can create at when you're fucking awake? You know what I mean? So like when you start looking at it through that type of lens, you're like, oh my God, like my thoughts, my emotions, if I can just get a handle on the feeling states that I'm basically dwelling in every day, right? And I just understand that, not from a self-judgment, the only person who can judge you is you. So you have to understand that, like, if I remove all of my own self-judgment, I can just realize that I was in nappy time in these really unwanted feeling states, and they kept producing all of these manifestations, right? And what is a feeling state? A feeling state is just a thought and emotion that's basically been built into a chronic mood, right? So if I entertain a temporary feeling state over and over and over again, then I can basically lock that in. That's the whole premise of assumptions hardened into facts, right? So if I have an experience where somebody says something negative to me, or I perceive it to be negative, and I think about it once and I'm like, oh no, I hope that didn't happen. And then because I thought that, something else popped up where it's like, did you hear what they said? And you're like, oh no, maybe that actually did happen, right? See how you're temporarily entering into a feeling state? So if you temporarily enter into a feeling state over and over and over again, that is an assumption, right? So it starts as like a small hunch, and then it moves into more and more gravitas of essentially being a chronic mood or state that you dwell in. And if you think about how little things, little insecurities may have snowballed into huge crippling things like money or health or whatever. The inverted process of that is if you just start slightly assuming repetitively that everything is going the way you want it to be, that same momentum can go in the direction that you want it to go. So it's like kind of impressive to think about how little effort, it's just the repetition. You have to really engage with something to physicalize a concrete fucking reality, right? So it's worth the small amount of discomfort in the beginning and the small amount of discipline it takes to just keep shifting your thoughts over and over and over again, right? To keep revising circumstances over and over and over again, because even with that type of process, right? So if you have a event that happens and it's not really the way that you want it, if you go into your mind and you revise it, basically how you want it to be, the first couple times you do that, it's going to be weird. You're going to feel like you're gaslighting yourself, and you're also going to be like, well, that didn't change what happened, so why the fuck am I revising this shit? But what happens is number one, that revision process gets easier, right? It's like if you go to the gym and you lift a 10-pound weight and you've never worked out in your life, you're like, this is 10 pounds. All right, this is what 10 pounds feels like, a little bit heavy. But you do that every day for 2 months, the 10-pound weight is nothing. It doesn't feel like anything. There's no resistance. I mean, it's literally the lightest thing in the world. So when you start revising things, every time you do it, right, you go over this tiny little hump where it's kind of difficult and you don't want to do it because it takes a little bit of time, whatever. As soon as you get over that tiny little hump, your mind starts to go, oh, this is how I'm supposed to fucking operate all the time. I'm not meant to take a snapshot of the worst thing that's ever happened and then freeze frame it and loop it and replay it over and over and over again until I fucking die. No, it's meant to take that input from your third dimensional world and go, oh shit, this is fucked up. And then what you do is you revise it in the way that you want it to be. And what that does is that changes your energy structure, because at the end of the day, the energy structure that you carry around with you is being reflected back to you in the third dimensional world, right? So if you have a bunch of fear, it's not that there is fear external to you doing all these things to you, it's that you got in your mind a fear virus type of emotional cloud, right? And that keeps getting populated into your environment like it's a VR simulator, right? So if I have a bunch of happiness in my field of energy, my whole world just reflects to me how happy of an existence this is. So taking command of those states of consciousness gives you the ability to essentially restructure your entire world under your domain, right? It gives you the ability to dictate the universe, not vice versa. It gives you the ability to allow your consciousness to dictate the universe as opposed to the universe dictating your consciousness, right? So if you have your consciousness setting the tones of how reality unfolds, preceding how you enter into third dimensional circumstances, you can drastically change the outcomes of how things formulate in your life, right? If I go into a room and there's a bunch of people and I'm going to speak on stage, I can sit there and think about how everybody's going to laugh at my speech. I'm going to look bad up there and it's going to be a big failure and I'm just nauseated thinking about how that's an option, right? Or I could say, no, I take full control of my imaginative capabilities because number one, I haven't even entered the room yet. So none of this has physicalized, right? It's not that it's not real, because if you experience that right now, it's pretty real for you. It's why it can fuck up your life when you think negatively all the time. So when you visualize it going really, really well and everything working out super, super good, that changes your energy structure to think and feel in that way. And remember, what does the third dimensional do? Third dimensional reality. It reflects and populates based off of your energy signature. So if I go in there, right, and say worst case scenario, I've been thinking and feeling that I was going to mess up a speech for 9 months, right? I go in there, but I change that internal dynamic to feel as if I'm going to kill it. Worst case scenario, I go in there and I feel amazing and I still bomb. But what I did was I revised my energy structure in a way to where future events, when I go to them, will never be at that same point of discomfort ever again. It can't go back unless I consciously go back into those states. So what I'm doing is I'm modifying my essential vibrational, unique signature of how I show up in the world, right? And what that means is controlling my imagination and always making it mold to my ideal instead of just allowing it to dominate me, right? Because if I'm in a fear state, what I'm doing is I'm letting all this shit tell me who I am. I'm like, fuck, you know? But as soon as I go, wait, hold on one second. All of this shit is only here because I'm aware and I'm observing it. It cannot exist without me engaging with it. I'm just going to engage with the ideal. As soon as you take enough power back to just start making that decision on a micro scale, even if you have like a cup of coffee that's not very good and you just revise it to be like, oh my God, that was the best cup of coffee. What you'll see is the next time you have a cup of coffee, maybe it's not the best cup of coffee, but it's 10% better than it was. And essentially, it's not anywhere close to the negative experience that you had before. So this video is all about understanding that you want to consciously go into the states that are useful to you exclusively, right? And you want to starve out any type of thing that is not what you want, pulling your awareness, right? And the way that you get out of the really tricky ones is you revise them over and over and over again mentally without worrying anything about how the third dimensional reality is going to react. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want coaching, click the link tree. Other than that, leave comments of videos that you want, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.